What's going on, guys? Dakota here, and welcome back to the Driven Mad channel. So, in today's video, we're going to be kind of talking about, we are going to be talking about installing the 2-inch Dynatrac Endurosport lift on the JL. So, at the time of me filming this, the lift is currently down here. So, we've got all the parts and everything, the coils I have over here. But what I was going to do at the moment is just going to go ahead and kind of get some measurements of things. Measure some of the distances between different things to kind of see how much of a lift is it actually. It's a 2-inch lift, but you know, sometimes 2-inch lifts can really be 2.5s. Sometimes they're even 3. You know, so I just kind of want to see what the overall lift is going to be. So for now, we're going to go ahead and kind of take some brief measurements. That way we can try to see a pretty good comparison. So I've got the tape measure just resting right on top of the tire, and since the tires are going to be the same size, from the top of the tread up to basically the bottom of the fender is just a tad over 7 inches. Not quite 7.5. Looks like about maybe 7.25 inches from the top of the tire to the bottom. Now in the rear, we're setting it on top of the tread, actually more at about 6.5. So 6.5 inches from the top of the tread to the bottom of the fender on the rear. Now measuring from the ground up to the bottom of the rock rail is about 18 inches. So we will see, you know, theoretically it should go up to 20. Okay, so I'm hoping you guys can see this, because if not, then this will be kind of pointless. But we're gonna go ahead and measure from the bottom of the axle, I guess technically it's the top of the axle, to the top of the shock tower, which looks like it's about 11.5 inches. Okay, now we're gonna measure from the bottom, from the ground up to basically the rear tow hook. Again, nothing super scientific, just trying to get an idea. And that looks like it's about 19 inches. All right, guys, so there you have it. Nothing super scientific, you know, that's not what I'm trying to do, just trying to get a baseline for about how much lift we will end up getting. I'm pretty excited about it, so for you guys, thanks to the magic of editing, this will be in about 20 seconds. But for me, it's gonna be about a week till it gets put on, so I will see you guys then. All right, guys, so I got the Jeep out, and as you guys can see, the lift is installed. So I've had a couple of days to kind of drive it, and so like I said, the lift's installed, and it really kind of makes my 35s look small now. Looks like my Jeep skipped leg day. So yeah, real quick, what we're gonna do is just kind of go over some measurements of everything kind of after it's been installed, and just kind of compare it to what it was stock. And because I feel like this has definitely been lifted, it looks like it's been lifted more than 2 inches. So I'm thinking it's gonna be closer to about 3 inches from everything that we previously measured. But real quick, what we're gonna do is just kind of go over what the kit came with and everything. So on the front, we basically ended up moving the rear sway bar end links up to the front. And obviously we got longer front coils and the Fox Performance Series 2.0 shocks, as well as some brake line extensions. So again, that's been done on both sides. No, this kit didn't come with any like control arms or anything like that, like I showed you guys previously. And in the rear, same thing, Fox 2.0 series, Performance Series shocks. We got some larger, taller rear coils, some new rear sway bar end links, as well as slightly taller bump stop extensions there. And that's basically the whole kit, so not a whole lot to it. Yeah, you guys have got to see a little bit of this if you followed my follow me on Instagram at driven_mad. So now let's go ahead and just get kind of the measurements of everything after it's been installed. And then what we'll do is take it out on the road and give you guys kind of my initial impressions after having the lift on for a few days, and kind of what to expect. All right, so if you guys remember from earlier, from the top of the tire to the bottom of the front fender was 7.25 inches. So now it goes basically up to 10 inches. So not quite a full 3 inches, but about 2 3/4 inches taller on the front. on the rear, when it was stock, it was about 6.5 inches from the top of the tire to the fender. So now, again, it's almost basically like 9.5 if you measure up to here, up to the top. If you measure to about right here, then we're looking at just a little over 8 inches. All right, then from the ground up to the bottom of the rock rail, again, stock it was 18 inches. So there's 20, and it's not technically at the bottom. So about 20 3/4 inches is where it is now, almost 21 inches. So again, still over 2 inches so far. All right, then if you guys remember, from the ground to the rear tow hook was 19. This is now sitting at 21. All right, then if you guys remember, from the top of the axle right here to the top of the shock tower was 11.5, and now it's right at about 14 1/8, if it'll focus there. So again, just a little over 2 inches there. All right, so just some brief, non-super scientific measurements show that basically after adding this 2-inch lift, the Jeep average has gained about 2.75, 2 3/4 inches of lift, kind of all around. So now again, keep in mind that this lift is universal for 2-door and 4-door. So if you have a 4-door Jeep and you put this same lift on, it's gonna be a little different because the 4-door Jeep is heavier, therefore it's gonna push down on those springs and shocks a little bit more. So it might not be exactly 2.75. You might get 2.5 or 2 1/4. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, so far I'm definitely happy with the amount of lift. Although, like I said, now it kind of makes my Jeep look like it skipped leg day because the 35s are looking a little small now. So I might upgrade to 37s a little sooner than I expected. But it's just an excuse to get new tires. So I probably won't be doing that before my trip to Moab, but it's definitely something that is now on the list, because then once I do that, I'm gonna want to go ahead and re-gear and probably put bigger brakes on there. So it's not gonna be immediate, but it is gonna happen a little bit faster. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead, hop in the Jeep, and give you guys my impressions of how it is on the road so far after the first few days, and then we'll do a follow-up, how it's done off-road and a little bit later. But just initial impressions, I'll go ahead and give you guys my thoughts on that. All right, guys, so initially, for my very first impressions, as soon as I started driving it, it definitely felt a lot stiffer. Now, I specifically picked this suspension system because if you guys watch, which I'm sure you do if you watch any Jeep stuff, Trail Recon, he did a suspension comparison where it was the Dynatrac lift with a bunch of others, and he said that was the closest one to riding to stock. So that's what I wanted. I basically just wanted a bit more clearance, a bit more a little bit more flex, and enough room to put larger tires on if I wanted, but I didn't want to compromise the ride. So that's why I bought this. And initially, when I first started driving it, it was definitely a lot stiffer. Now, that was like the first day. And when I say a lot stiffer, what I mean is, like, it felt like, if you guys are familiar with how suspensions work, it was just basically at the top of the travel. So like a shock, the more it's in the compression stroke, the more comfortable it is when it's in that compression stroke. The first day, it felt like it was just kind of getting used to the vehicle, and it didn't quite settle into the compression stroke and was just staying right at the top. Which is great for ground clearance and off-roading, but not so great for ride quality. Now, with that being said, after the first day was over and getting into kind of day 2, I noticed it was a little softer. And now, as of right the second when I'm driving, it feels pretty close to stock, but you can tell it's a little bit stiffer. Over certain bumps, it's a little bit stiffer. Now, also keep in mind that over some other bumps, like on the highway, you're driving around and you hit that big bump, instead of the Jeep kind of throwing yourself around and it kind of not being settled, basically you hit the bump and it was just a quick little, and then the Jeep was settled. So it wasn't throwing its weight around. It controlled the weight very well. Also, there's not as much nosedive under braking and under acceleration. It doesn't squat as much. And for me, having a manual, shifting, it doesn't nosedive as much. It's definitely a lot more controlled. And again, now after a couple of days, I feel like it's kind of settled in a little bit, and it's definitely not as rough as it was the first day. It's definitely a lot smoother. And then again, keep in mind, this is on a 2-door, so if you have a 4-door with an automatic, that's more weight. And if you got, you know, a big old heavy bumper with a winch and a big old heavy bumper in the rear, the more weight you put on it, the better it's going to ride, because you're going to ride in that compression stroke. So keep that in mind, because obviously depending on what type of vehicle you have, it will ride differently. But so far I'm definitely happy with it, and I'm glad that it's kind of settled out a little bit since the first day I drove it home. And obviously I haven't got to test it out off-road just yet, but eventually I will definitely do that, obviously, because whether it's when I go to Moab or just before then, we're definitely going to test it. But so far I'm very pleased with the on-road driving characteristics of it. It doesn't feel too rough. The JK that, if you guys may have seen on briefly, again, if you follow my Instagram, that was a 4-door with a 2-inch Mopar lift, and that rode worse, not as smooth as this does. So it's definitely not a bad riding suspension system, and so far I'm happy with it. I did get it realigned when I got it installed, and that was actually one of the first things I noticed, is that felt way tighter and way more direct on the steering. But so far I'm happy with the overall height of the lift. You know, I'm glad that it's a little bit over 2 inches. That makes me feel pretty good about the extra ground clearance gains, which if I'm going to Moab, I'm gonna need those on some of the trails I plan on hitting out there. You know, so I'm pretty happy with it so far. I'm really looking forward to actually testing it out off-road. Like, that's what I'm really looking forward to. But so far it rides very well, very controlled. Just that initial first day, I was a little worried, because I was like, uh-oh, this thing is definitely a lot stiffer. But again, I think it just settled into that where it was supposed to settle after that first day and a half or so, and it's definitely a lot smoother than it was then. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions about the lift or anything like that, please feel free to leave a comment down below and ask me questions. Like I said, unfortunately I didn't install this myself, didn't have the time, but I will answer as best as I can. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.